Hello, my name is Alexandra Deaver, and today I will be talking about the research article I found, and it's discussing high-intensity interval exercise and glycemic control in adolescents with type 1 diabetes. So, background. Type 1 diabetes is an immune-mediated diabetes, and it usually occurs in the juvenile years. It's an autoimmune disease, so the immune system attacks its own beta cells, which results in a deficiency of insulin, causing blood glucose levels to rise. Insulin injections are necessary to maintain a healthy and good blood glucose level. And insulin injections can come through the form of a syringe, the pinlet, or pumps, as seen in the picture. And first, some background about why I was interested in this topic. I have 9 kids in my family, and 3 of my sisters actually have type 1 diabetes. So I have been surrounded by it my whole life, and I have always been helping my sisters with their diabetes, especially my younger sister. And I think it's not talked that much about, and I always am looking for a chance to learn more about it and how I can help and what I can learn to do. Okay, purpose of the study. So not a lot of research has been done about exercise and diabetes and what is the best modality for them and what helps them the most, especially in adolescence. They did this study specifically in adolescents. So the researchers compared high intensity and moderate intensity exercise to see what the effects were in blood glucose levels. They also know that cardiovascular disease is a really well-known major cause of mortality in type 1 diabetics, and anything that we can do to help people not have that and prevent it is great, and exercise is one of those things. That picture is some Les Mills trainers doing their GRIT HIT program. Alright, for the method and the subjects. The subjects needed to have had diabetes for at least 3 years and be adolescents. So there was 1 female, age 17, 2 males, 1 at 14, and another at 16. The method would be the participants coming in for 4 separate occasions. The first day was data gathering, beginning the testing, and the data that they gathered were things like age, weight, height, body composition, and VO2 max. The following 3 visits consisted of the experiment portion of the research as well. So continuing with the methodology. So for the first day, they gathered the data. The VO2 max, peak power, and the gas exchange threshold was gathered by the subjects participating in a combination of ramp, incremental, and supermaximal tests until they got tired. And then they were given a diary to track their insulin that they gave themselves and to also track how many carbohydrates they ate during the day. And they had to keep track of this diary during the extent of the experiment. They were also given a continuous glucose monitoring system, so the researchers could track their blood sugars as well. Day 2, they continued to participate in the experiment and where the CGMS, and then day 3, the participants came in following an overnight fast, and they were given a standardized breakfast, performed the exercise given to them, either the high intensity, moderate intensity, or no exercise for the control group. But however, if they had a low blood sugar from the day previous, then they would not participate in exercise. Day 4, they removed the continuous glucose monitoring system. So a little bit more details about that. They were given the breakfast that was the same carbohydrate, same everything, at 8:30 in the morning. By 10:30, they were off to start doing the exercise that they were given. If they were in the HIT group, then they would be cycling for 3 minutes for a warm-up at 20 watts, 8 bouts of 1-minute work at 90% of their peak power, followed by a minute and 15 seconds of recovery after each bout, and then they had a 3-minute cool down at the same intensity as the warm-up. Then in the moderate intense group, they would do 30 minutes of cycling at 90% of the participants' gas exchange threshold, and that was also at 20 watts. And then obviously the control group, no exercise. They took the rate of perceived exertion every 5 minutes in the moderate intensity group, and then after each minute of work in the high intensity group. The participants were also asked to rate their experience, to rate which one they liked the most out of the exercises. And they were also given a protein shake at noon, and they were to give themselves, for both breakfast and the shake, a correction with insulin 10 to 15 minutes before consumption. And they were asked to continue eating just as they normally would throughout the day. So they would just eat as they would, but they needed to keep track of their insulin intake and also their carbohydrate intake, and if they had a low blood sugar. Here are the results. So this is during the exercise. This is the female, age 17. The dots represent the control group, the squares represent the moderate intense, and then the triangle represents the high intense. So for the female, actually, she went a little above baseline every time for each group. So that was kind of interesting to see, especially compared with her two other adolescent counterparts. The participant B, the 14-year-old male, he stayed pretty close to baseline during the control group, but then in the moderate intense and the high intense, he did go below, and he actually went more below in the moderate intense group during the exercise. And then for the C participant, the 16-year-old male, he was the closest to baseline during the exercise, with high intensity actually staying pretty right on. All right, so in other words, individually, all of them had very different experiences during the actual exercise testing. But the researchers found that overall, the high-intensity exercise produced a hypoglycemic effect in the nighttime, and during the 24 hours post-exercise, the high intensity showed the greatest reduction in blood sugar. Now, the moderate intense did also reduce blood sugar as well, but not quite as much as the high intense. Also, the participants shared that they had much more enjoyment in the high intense exercise rather than the moderate intense exercise. So in conclusion, high intensity exercise is very beneficial for type 1 diabetics and shows positive effects in the lowering of blood glucose levels. Now, for clinical exercise physiologists, how can we apply this? If I was a clinical exercise physiologist and a diabetic was coming to me, these are some of the questions that I would ask and be worried about. Do they participate in activity at all? Do they exercise? What is their current activity level? Are they wanting to lose any weight? Do they think that they're overweight? Are they not overweight, but they think they are? Are there any other conditions that we should be aware of? What are their blood sugars like? Do they try to keep track of them? Do they keep track of the insulin that they give themselves, the carbohydrates they intake? Do they have any idea? What is their A1C? I'd also ask what medication they're on and how might that affect their time of exercise. There's two different kinds of medication. There's the one that you take after you eat and then you take during the day, and then some people are also on, which is you have to be on both, but there's another one that you take that lasts for 24 hours as well. And does their diet need any modification? What carbohydrates are they good on? Are there certain carbohydrates that they have noticed that they can't really eat? Like for my sister, for instance, she gets really high off of bananas. Even if she has a low blood sugar, for some reason, a banana just like makes her blood sugars go way, way up. So she stays away from bananas. And finally, I would see how they mentally are doing. Diabetes is not an easy disease to handle. It's something that they have to deal with multiple times a day. They don't get a day off, and there's no cure for it. So it's draining on them. And I know from my sisters, they say some days they're over it. So I would check in on them mentally as well. And those are my references. I hope that you have found this to be interesting as I have, and that we can go forward trying to find some, do some more research on diabetes and bring some more awareness to it, because there's not a lot that I feel is talked about when it comes to type 1 diabetes. And when I was doing this research and I found these things out, I talked to my sisters about their experience with exercise, and they shared the same feelings that in high intensity exercise, their blood sugars definitely go down and have better effect in that. So I hope that this was informative, and thank you for watching.